All right, so ready to dive into a world most people only see on the surface.
I'm game if you are. What are we getting into today?
Makeup and hair design. But trust me, this isn't your average makeover situation.
Oh, I know a thing or two about that. Makeover kind of undersells it, don't you think?
Big time. We're talking about bringing characters to life on screen and stage, and we've got some amazing insights from RoleCatcher's career library.
RoleCatcher, that rings a bell, isn't that?
Yeah, it's like getting a peek behind the curtain, seeing what someone actually going for this career would be looking at.
Love that. So, Spill, what kind of insider secrets are we uncovering today?
Well, the research part really surprised me. I mean, you'd think it's all about makeup brushes and color palettes.
Right, but there's a whole other side to it.
Exactly. It's like they mentioned analyzing scripts and scores, even keeping up with sociological trends.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's about way more than just making someone look pretty. You got to understand the character, the time period, the whole social context.
You practically have to be a historian.
A little bit, yeah. You're recreating a world, and that world needs to feel authentic.
And speaking of creating worlds, get this, the guide even talks about how a makeup and hair designer might analyze the musical score.
Makes sense, right? Music sets the tone, creates the mood.
I guess so, but how does that even translate to makeup?
Think about it. A delicate scene with, like, a solo piano. You'd probably go for a softer makeup look, more romantic, to match that vibe.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
But then you shift to a big dramatic orchestral piece, and suddenly you're thinking bolder colors, sharper lines, something with more impact visually.
Wow, I never would have thought of it that way. It's like every single detail you see on screen, there's so much thought behind it.
Exactly. It's all about telling a story, and we're a part of that.
Speaking of stories, we should probably talk about the lifestyle too. The guide doesn't exactly sugarcoat it.
Well, it's not always glamorous, that's for sure.
Right, they mentioned flexible hours, which sounds great, but also those irregular long hours that come with freelance work.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, right? You got to be ready to work when the project demands it, weekends, evenings, even holidays sometimes. And the competition, let me tell you,
Oh, I bet.
you really have to hustle to build your network and stay on top of everything new.
Speaking of new, I have to ask about this. Monitoring sociological trends is listed as a transferable skill. That's not something you see every day.
It just goes to show how much things have changed.
Like, how so?
It's not enough to just be good with makeup, You have to be in tune with what's happening in the world. Fashion, music, art, it all feeds into your creative process.
It's like being a cultural sponge, soaking it all up.
Exactly, and then using all of that to create something new and exciting.
That actually reminds me, and another thing that surprised me was how much collaboration goes on behind the scenes.
Oh, it's huge. It's not a solo act, that's for sure.
Right, you're working with the director, the costume designer, even the lighting designer.
It's all connected. Like, I'm thinking about how the makeup's going to look under those stage lights or on camera. A great example is how makeup and hair choices can actually influence the lighting design itself.
Wait, really?
For sure. If you're going for a supernatural look, you don't want this harsh lighting that washes out the actor's features,
Yeah.
right? It's all got to work together.
So it's about more than just making people look good. It's about making sure they look good in the context of the whole production.
Exactly. It's all about that synergy, like the guide calls it, artistic harmony. Everything has to come together to create a truly immersive experience for the audience.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the creative side, but the guide also breaks down the career stages, entry level, junior, senior. And what I found interesting was how the skills you need change as you move up that ladder.
It's a journey, It's not just about what you know when you start out.
Right, so you're not just thrown into the deep end right away.
Not usually. It's more like an apprenticeship. You start by assisting more experienced designers, learning the ropes, developing your skills.
So you're watching, learning, getting your hands dirty.
Exactly. And then as you gain that experience and confidence, you take on more responsibility, maybe even start to mentor newer artists yourself.
Oh, wow, so it comes full circle. So it's not just about talent, it's about putting in the work, building that portfolio, making those connections.
100%. By the time you reach a senior level, you're leading the design process, shaping the whole aesthetic, managing teams, mentoring those coming up behind you.
Wow, it's like you go from student to master.
You got it. You're not just an artist anymore, you're a leader. Which actually reminds me of something else from the guide that really stood out. Makeup and hair designers often get to work independently, like true autonomous artists.
Wait, really? I thought it was all about working on film sets or in theaters. What else is there?
Oh, tons. Think fashion photography, magazine editorials, even special effects makeup for those big conventions. The skills you learn, they're valuable in so many different areas.
It's like you have this incredible toolkit, and the possibilities are endless.
Exactly. And the best part is each project is different. Each one brings its own unique challenges, so you're always learning and growing as an artist.
That's amazing. All right, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I do want to talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, the guide mentions the job can be glamorous, sure, but it also touches on some potential downsides, like the risks involved.
Right. It's not all fun and games. There are some very real risks you have to be aware of in this line of work.
Like what?
Well, the guide specifically mentions exposure to chemicals, which is something most people don't really think about.
Yeah, that's not exactly the first thing that comes to mind when you think makeup artist.
Exactly. But think about it, you're constantly around these products, the fumes, the powders, the adhesives. Some of those ingredients can be pretty harsh. A good makeup and hair designer needs to know how to handle all those materials safely, both for themselves and for the people they're working with.
Right, of course. It's like you're responsible for their well-being, not just their appearance.
100%. It's all part of being a professional.
So we're back. And, before we jumped into the break, we were talking about those potential risks for makeup and hair designers. It's not all like red carpets and movie premieres, right?
Not even close. And those risks, they're real. It's something you have to be incredibly mindful of, especially when you start getting into specialized areas like special effects makeup.
Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of risks are we talking about here?
Well, you're working with a lot of different materials, some of them pretty potent. The guide specifically calls out exposure to chemicals as something to be really aware of.
Okay, yeah, when you put it like that, it makes sense. It's not something you'd necessarily think about right away, though.
Right. Most people probably don't picture a hazmat suit when they think of a makeup artist.
Right. But I guess when you're working with all those different products, day in and day out,
Exactly. All those fumes, the powders, the adhesives, and you're up close and personal with all of it every day. Some of those ingredients can be really harsh. And a good makeup and hair designer, they know that. They know how to work with those materials safely, how to protect themselves and the actors they're working on.
right, like you're responsible for their well-being, too, not just their appearance.
Exactly. It's about being professional, knowing the ins and outs of your craft.
So we're talking like proper ventilation, things like that,
Yeah.
and probably knowing how to deal with any reaction someone might have.
Oh, absolutely. Skin sensitivities,
Yeah.
allergies, you have to be ready for anything. It's not just about making someone look good, it's about keeping them safe. That's a big part of the job. And speaking of the job, I think it's so cool how this career path can take you in all these different directions. Like we were talking about makeup and hair designers who go on to work independently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like branching out from the world of like film and theater. What other opportunities are out there? What else can you do with these skills?
Well, think about it, all those skills you've honed on set, creating a look, understanding lighting, knowing how to work with different skin tones and face shapes that translates to so many other areas.
So it's almost like being a chameleon, adapting to different environments, different projects.
In a way, yeah. You could find yourself doing makeup for a fashion shoot one day, and the next, you're working on an editorial spread for a magazine. Or you might even get into special effects makeup for those big conventions, the ones with all the cosplay.
It sounds like there's a ton of variety.
Yeah.
So you're not just limited to being on a film set or backstage at a theater.
Nope. You could be working with photographers, designers, stylists. It's all about using your creativity and skills in new and interesting ways.
So let's say someone's listening to us right now and they're like, that's it, I'm sold. I want to be a makeup and hair designer.
Hmm.
What would you tell them? How do they even get started in a field like this?
That's the exciting part. There's no one right answer. Some people go the traditional route. They get a formal degree in makeup artistry or cosmetology.
Makes sense, building that solid foundation.
Exactly. But the guide also stresses the importance of hands-on experience. You need to be on set, assisting, observing, really getting a feel for how things work in the real world.
So it's not enough to just learn the theory in a classroom. You have to actually get your hands dirty, make some mistakes, learn from the best.
Exactly. Internships, apprenticeships, even volunteering on student films or local theater productions, all of that adds up. And honestly, it's the best way to build your portfolio, too.
Right, because at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. You
Yep.
can tell someone you're a talented makeup artist, but showing them your work, that's way more powerful.
100%. And another thing that often gets overlooked is the power of networking. Go to industry events, connect with other artists, reach out to people whose work you admire. You never know what doors those connections might open.
Yeah, it's like they say, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. Though it definitely helps to know your stuff too.
Right. But having those connections, those mentors who can guide you and vouch for you, it can make all the difference when you're starting out.
It's like having a backstage pass to the industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the less glamorous side of things, the different paths you can take, the importance of experience and networking. But there's one more element I want to bring into the mix before we move on technology.
Oh, interesting. You thinking about like airbrushing and all the new special effects makeup techniques?
Well, that's definitely part of it, but it goes beyond just the techniques themselves. Technology is such a huge part of film and TV these days. Heck, even theater. I'm curious how all of those advancements are impacting the world of makeup and hair design on a broader level.
It's definitely an exciting time to be in the field. Like you said, technology is changing the game. I mean, take airbrushing, for example. That's been around for a while, but the technology just keeps getting better and better. We're talking about this incredible level of detail now, especially for high-definition cameras.
Yeah, you can practically see every pore on someone's face in HD.
Exactly. So as a makeup artist, you have to be able to create this flawless canvas that holds up under that kind of scrutiny.
Wow, the pressure is on. And then you've got all the advancements in things like prosthetics. Some of the stuff they can do now is insane.
Right. It's mind-blowing. You can create these super realistic wounds, scars, even age people up or down by decades, and it's all incredibly believable.
Yeah, you look at some of the creatures and characters in movies now, and like, how did they even do that? It's amazing how seamlessly they blend makeup with technology these days.
It really is. And then you throw digital enhancements into the mix, and it gets even wilder.
Right. We can't forget about those.
Yeah.
Suddenly we're talking about changing someone's eye color or smoothing out wrinkles with the click of a button. It's getting harder and harder to tell where the makeup ends and the special effects begin.
Exactly. And that's the thing, it makes you wonder, where does it go from here?
Right.
Will we get to a point where practical makeup effects become obsolete?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, technology is evolving so rapidly.
Right. But even with all of that, I truly believe there will always be a need for skilled makeup and hair designers. Humans.
To bring that human touch, that artistry.
Exactly. Because no matter how good technology gets, it's still just technology, It can't replicate the creativity, the intuition, the problem-solving skills of a real human being.
I love that. It's reassuring to know that even in this increasingly digital world, there's still a place for artistry and craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, there's one more piece of technology I want to ask you about before we move on. You familiar with RoleCatcher's AI-powered tools?
Yeah, I've heard about those. Pretty wild stuff. Like, it just goes to show you how much AI is changing things, even in creative fields like ours.
It's crazy, right? Like, they've got these tools that can analyze a job description and tell you which version of your resume or CV is most likely to get 100%. It really highlights how technology is changing the game, not just in terms of how we create, but also how we connect with opportunities.
We're back. And it's funny, we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, the ins and outs of the job. But for me, what really makes makeup and hair design so special is, well, the art of it all.
Right. Like it's more than just, oh, let's make this person look good. It goes way deeper than that.
Exactly. It's about transformation. It's about bringing those characters to life, and not just like in a literal sense.
It's about taking those words on a page and like translating them into something the audience can really connect with, something visual.
Oh, 100%. It's like you're adding this whole other layer to the story.
Exactly. I mean, think about a movie like The Dark Knight, right?
Okay, yeah.
Heath Ledger is the Joker. Iconic performance, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And the makeup, a huge part of what made that character so unforgettable, so creepy. Those smeared red lips, that messy green hair. It wasn't just makeup, it was a whole vibe. It's true. It gave me chills every time I saw it. But you're right, it wasn't just about making him look different. It was about showing you something about who that character was deep down.
Exactly. It's like you're using makeup and hair to tell a story without even using words, right? And when it's done well, it just adds so much depth. It makes you believe it.
Totally. It makes you realize, like, every little detail matters. The colors, the hairstyle, even a tiny scar or a freckle, it all has an impact.
100%. Because you're creating a world, right?
Yeah.
And every detail, it adds to the authenticity of that world, whether it's set in like Victorian England or a galaxy far, far away. And that authenticity, that's what draws the audience in.
It makes them forget they're watching a movie or a play.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, they're right there in the story with those characters.
Right. Suspension of disbelief. And a lot of that comes down to the visuals. If the makeup and hair aren't believable, the whole illusion falls apart.
It makes you appreciate those behind-the-scenes artists even more. I mean, it's easy to focus on the actors, but there's a whole team of creative people working their magic to make it all come together.
Absolutely. And they don't always get the credit they deserve. But honestly, I think most of us, we're not in it for the fame.
It's about the art.
Exactly. It's about the collaboration, the problem solving, the challenge of bringing something new and exciting to life.
I love that. It's inspiring. So I guess what we're saying is, next time you're watching a movie or a play, take a second to really see the makeup and the hair.
Mm.
You might be surprised by what you notice.
Think about what those details tell you about the characters, the story. You might just see the whole thing in a whole new light.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the incredible world of makeup and hair design.
It's been a blast.
I couldn't agree more. Big thanks to RoleCatcher's Career Library for giving us a peek behind the curtain. And to all of you listening, until next time, keep exploring.